So now I'm going to turn it over to our BPS team, who is going to tell us the order. I don't know who's speaking first, but they will introduce themselves and share some of these updates with you. So it's all in your hands.
Well, this is Superintendent Skipper. I just wanted to say, I know the team is prepared to present, but I just wanted to say it's an honor to be with you. Thank you for the invitation. I enjoy hearing some of the comments. I do have a 7:30 that I have to leave for, so I'm hoping to hear as much as I can, and then I'll follow up with the team after that. But thank you very much for the invite.
Good evening, everyone. Linda Chen, Senior Deputy Superintendent of Academics, and I have responsibility and have the privilege to lead alongside Lauren Viviani in special education. And I also have a commitment at 7:30, and I definitely want to hear as much as possible and look forward to continuing to meet with all of you and partner with you. But the team is on, and thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Viviani. I'm the Interim Assistant Superintendent in Special Education. And we do have a small slideshow that I can either share or I can drop the, maybe Joshi, if you can drop the link to the slides in the chat, but I'm happy to share my screen as we walk through it. I do want to introduce a couple of more folks that are on the screen with us tonight. First of all, we have Dr. Ana Tavares. She's a Deputy Superintendent. Ana, do you want to jump on and say hello?
Good evening, everyone. I'm very much looking forward to collaborating and learning from the community and very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ana. And we also have Angie Camacho with us.
Good evening, everyone. I am so excited to be with so many of you that I've worked in the community with over the years. Thrilled to share more as we go on.
And I have my colleague, Monica Hogan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Monica Hogan, Assistant Superintendent leading the work with DESE on the Systemic Improvement Plan. Glad to be here.
And is Ethan on yet? I'm not sure I've seen Ethan come on yet.
He will be joining in the next 5 minutes.
Okay, great. So when he comes on, we'll make sure he gets introduced. And then there is Heidi Cahoon, McEwen.
Good evening, everyone.
And Mary Marcella.
Hi, everyone.
Mary and Heidi are both assistant directors in the regional model for special education, supporting the 9 regions under the direction of school superintendents. Did I get everyone from BPS side? Okay. Great. So when Ethan comes on, we will make sure that we
I think, Lauren, did Joshi get a chance to introduce herself?
Oh, Joshi. I'm sorry, Joshi. Thank you.
It's okay. Hi, everyone. I am Joshi, Family Engagement Coordinator for the Special Ed Office.
Thank you, Joshi. I assume because she had already been talking that she had been introduced. I'm so sorry. So we do have a short slideshow. We're so grateful that you asked about an update for the Systemic Improvement Plan. And there were a couple of questions that were provided to us in advance. So we will answer those for sure. And then as we run through the whole presentation, I'm sure there'll be additional questions that we can take. So first of all, here's just a quick agenda. There's questions from the community that we're going to talk about. There's the BPS Helpline. So Angelina is going to give us an overview of the BPS Helpline. We're going to talk really quickly about the McKinley work group, and then Ethan's going to provide an inclusion overview. All of these things are related to the Systemic Improvement Plan in special education. One of the questions that you had for us was that you found the manual, the policy and procedure manual, very helpful. One of the questions was, how do we ensure that all of the manual is being implemented, and what is their accountability around implementation? And one of those, to that end, we want to make sure, as Angie will talk about for the helpline, we want to make sure that you have access to get your questions answered. And so the helpline is a great way to do that. And Angie will kind of share how we can go about doing that. But also, we really encourage you to work with your school leaders, the assistant directors for each region, reach out to the Office of Special Education, reach out to me if you're seeing disconnect between what the policy manual says and what's happening on the ground. There are due process rights. The parent procedural safeguards are a very important document in IDEA for special education. And we can make sure that you all have access to that. On the good, another kind of exciting development related to the policy manual is that we are engaging in a competitive procurement to have an agency produce some of the policy manual that's most salient for families in family-friendly language. And it's going to be translated. Right now it is translated, but it's 170 pages or something like that. So we're looking at how do we produce bite-size or kind of brochure-like documents for families to understand the most important parts of the manual, things around transportation, things around calling for an IEP meeting, and your rights and responsibilities for the district, for BPS, and for families, the rights of families. So those are all in the works and coming soon. We're just getting ready to award the contract in the very near future. And then there was a question about how do we provide feedback, which I found was so exciting because that means you're reading the manual and you have some great ideas about what to do. So we created a form, and if you have a copy of the slides, you can click the link here, but this is also on our website where the manual is, and there's a form you can click on. It's all translated as well. And you can produce, you can go there and you can have your voices heard about what part of the manual you found helpful, what part of the manual you think needs editing, what part of the manual that you think needs additional resources. So that was kind of one of the first deliverables around the manual and kind of how we're then moving forward with regard to the policy and procedure manual for the SIP.
Lauren, can you go into slideshow format for us, please?
Yeah, I can. The problem is then I can't see anything else. So yeah, I'm sorry, I can, but I can't.
We'll tell you if anything pops up in the chat or anything, so.
Oh, thank you very much. Okay. So then the other question that came up was related to the interview process. So Monica's going to take that question around. I'm going to just stop sharing because that question, we didn't actually make a slide, but Monica's going to talk to us a little bit about the question around the engagement for the chief position.
Thanks, Lauren. So earlier in October, we posted a chief of special education and a special advisor for special education position on the website as part of the systemic improvement plan deliverables. We are in the process of working to identify an external recruitment agency to assist us with the hiring process and recruiting a candidate pool for both of these positions. And Superintendent Skipper or Dr. Chen, feel free to chime in, but we are committed to, through this process, working with SpEdPAC to identify how you can be involved in that interview process. And so we'll be coordinating with Roxy around what that involvement looks like as we build out that interview process. And Superintendent Skipper or Dr. Chen, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, just, I think for us, we wanted, we felt that raising the, a position to a chief level ensures that special education is always at the table in decision-making, in any of the district initiatives. And it's really that intentionality that needs to happen so that special education students in programming are kind of always in the center. So we're thrilled, and we're thrilled to partner with SpEdPAC and make sure that you have representation and you can, help, because you better than anyone as parents know what's needed in terms of support. So we're thrilled, and thank you for offering, and we happily accept.
Yes, and we really count on your partnership in terms of, and for sure we'll reach out to Roxy in terms of representation in the process, but beyond that, please share the posting with folks, as well as we look forward to working with you on your input, even if you're not representing on the actual process itself. So thank you so much for your partnership.
Very good. Okay, I will return to sharing my screen. Angie is up next, who's going to talk to us and share about the helpline.
Lauren, can I just ask, could you just take
Sure.
a second and just you or Monica, or I can, whoever, but just briefly just distinguish between the two positions?
I'm happy to do that, Superintendent. So the special advisor position will be focused on leading the implementation of recommendations that we receive from the Council of Great City Schools. That report is scheduled to be presented publicly on November 16th at the school committee meeting. And so that role will be working closely on ensuring implementation of those recommendations. The Chief of Special Education will oversee the Office of Special Education in sort of more of the operational and day-to-day aspects, and work closely with the special advisor on implementation of recommendations as necessary. Both of those positions will be members of the superintendent's executive team and will be at the table as policy decisions are being made around special education and other policies in the district. And while I'm talking, I will also answer the next question in the chat around the coordinator of problem resolution. We have hired actually 2 positions related to the problem resolution system. So this is the state's system for complaints that get sort of sent to districts around special education and other areas. So we have hired both a coordinator and a paralegal to ensure that the district is responding in a timely fashion to any complaints that are made through the state's problem resolution system.
Thank you. Any other nuances around that? There was a target timeline to have the positions filled. Monica, are you able to answer that about the target timeline?
I'm happy to. I also see the superintendent unmuted, so.
Yeah. So we generally have our positions up for a couple of weeks to ensure we get a competitive pool. I think on these positions, we definitely want to do that. We have a little bit more time crunch, certainly on the special assistant for the simple reason that it has a body of work to oversee. But that said, we want it, to be competitive, and we want to make sure we have a strong, diverse pool. So, we'll keep monitoring. We're circulating the positions. We've posted them and are posting them out on the Council of Great City Schools. So we're trying to get them circulated as many places as possible. If you could do the same and help us in your networks, that would be terrific too. But I would anticipate, this being the last week of October, that we would probably start the screening mid-November for the senior advisor, and then for the chief, that might be well after Thanksgiving toward the holiday. We want to make sure we're in the cycle to be competitive, particularly for the chief one, because that generally for like higher level positions, people tend to look December, January, February. That's the time frame. So we're not going to start to screen it until we feel like we have a pool that's deserving of that, right? That's really qualified. Yes, and Roxy, as Roxy indicated, so we also posted with the Council of Great City Schools, which is national. So that is one of the mechanisms that we'll use to circulate that. And then we also are going to work with a recruiter to get the chief position posted and circulated elsewhere on some of the national sites.
And I think even with those positions open, the question in the chat is applicable to this, an updated org chart.
Yes, we are working on that. So, when that will be something that we release within school committee, and then are you talking specifically for special ed?
I know Danielle usually asks for special ed and district, so both actually, for special ed and then also for Both, yes, she said both.
That's great. So yeah, so special ed, we can definitely give and provide. I think for the overall org chart, we're still settling positions. But we'll get, that'll be timely and we'll be sharing that with school committee as well. We're working hard on it.
Okay. Give you some wait time for final questions about this topic. Thank you. Thank you. Good questions very much. Thank you very much. Okay. So Angie, I'm going to share my screen again and I'm going to go into, sorry, give me 1 second. I'm going to share the right thing.
It's all right. It also gives me a second to unmute. You know how it goes when you start talking and everyone's like doing this. Well, I don't happen to see it, Lauren.
What are you seeing?
I see a blank screen saying that you have started screen sharing.
Lauren, do you want me to share slides?
Yeah, would you? Obviously, I'm having some technical difficulty now.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Give me 1 second.
All right. So while we're getting started, I'm just going to go ahead and list our contact information for the BPS Helpline. The BPS Helpline is really a hub for resources, responses, and results on the things that really are important to you. So there's a number of things that we do that can really support families way before we get to this PRS process, right? We understand that absolutely if a family needs to advocate to that level, absolutely do. Anyone who knows me knows that I say, do what you need to do as a parent for your children. But what if we could partner way beyond that in positive ways? What if we can contact you and get you the answers that you need, help you build the pathways to the problems that you want to solve in a positive way? The helpline is here to do that. One of the things that we do is we actually provide closed loop resolution, right? Say, for instance, you wanted a high school transcript. The old method and other call centers would have a per call time limit. You have to wrap that call up. We care about when it is solved for you. So the old model, you would only have so many minutes to get that information in, and we would call it closed when the item that you asked for was ordered or sent. Under this new model, we want to make sure that we contact you to make sure that you got what you were looking for. Oh, I'm sorry, if we can swing right back. Thank you so much. And then we would resolve it at that point. And we want to make sure you're satisfied with the answer. At times where it's an issue that cannot be solved, we actually do have an escalation process. And there's also a case management system so that when you call us, if there's any service that needs to be extended to you, you don't leave empty-handed. You do leave each call with at least, oh, I'm so sorry. Am I going too fast for the translators? Okay. All right, great, thank you. You do leave with at least a ticket that is your confirmation that we are working on it. Our system is actually pretty innovative. You're going to see over the course of months as we roll out that there's going to be different ways that we could use the system for you to give us feedback. Right now, if we open a ticket for you, you can actually give us notes back. You can even see certain public notes, not public notes to the community, but public to you. So say, for instance, you can't reach us or we can't reach you, we're playing phone tag. We can actually put a note in so you can see that we are either waiting for a call or we sent a message to someone, or there's a couple of steps that are in progress. So that way you have a way to actively communicate with us, even when we can't reach each other immediately. And then again, going back to escalation and capacity support, we actually represent 5 out of the 9 top languages spoken, and we're also hiring. I'll put that in the chat. Oh, yes, so I'll get to that, Jesse, I see you. So we speak 5 of the 9 top languages that are represented in BPS, and we serve as a partner with you through each different level that's needed to get to the resolution that you're looking for. We do also, again, help with being a navigator. So what we really want to do is to be that resource partner before a problem exists, but also that bridge partner when we reach a place of harm. And we want to repair at that place of harm so that you can be constructively connected to the BPS communities in ways that you need us to be there for your family. There was a question from Jesse about when do we start? We started as a soft launch back in May. Our original focus was just to get into this place of getting that ticketing system going, really making sure that the fields that we need to capture are capturing the right information for families. And now we're in a place where our staff, even though we do need to staff up a bit, and so sometimes it can be a little slow going, we want to make sure that every ticket is actively being worked on with other staff members so that we're all contributing to each case effectively for you. And so, yes, thank you, Maria. I started speeding up. I apologize. I was trying to make sure I got to time. So, so I will be here for the course of the meeting. I want to make sure everyone else has a chance to share, but there's lots of information that I can share when we get to Q&A, and I'll be here with you.
Thank you, Angie. And were you able to name the 5 languages?
Oh, my apologies. Okay, so we speak Spanish, Cabo Verdean Creole, we speak French, Arabic, let's see, and Portuguese.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
And-
much, Angie.
Oh, thank you. I was about to say, and Lauren, take it away.
Yeah. Then one more question.
Oh, Lauren is switching to the next slide. It's asking about the average wait time in the helpline. Whereas I know this person says 13+ minutes, but we've also heard from some families 45 minutes. So I'm just wondering currently, what is the average wait time?
The average wait time is 7 minutes.
Thank you. That's my fault. I didn't read the whole thing. And are you tracking wait time so that it can be looked at? We asked what's been the wait time in September, October, as the years and months go on. Are you actively tracking the wait time?
We do track wait time right now. We can pull it, we can pretty much pull it for any time period. But we hope to do more, like instead of ad hoc reports, we hope to be able to install things like dashboards so that you would be able to see our progress on the service that we are giving to the community.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And Roxy, of course, as you know me, it's, let me know what you need, and we'll try to get things scaffolded so that you don't have to wait on a report. We can actively give you the information that you need so that we can work proactively with SpEdPAC or anyone else who's looking for our help.
Excellent. Thank you.
No
Laura,
worries.
Yeah, I think Yashi, next slide. Or
Yeah, thank you, Joshi. So the McKinley work group includes Gretchen from Harvard, Chitra, she's from the McKinley group, some folks from a parent, a student, the school leader. Edith Bazil represents Desi. Roxanne is on it, Roxy, and Leah, Kirsten, and Brendan Hernandez is from the school committee. I wasn't there, so Roxy, I would love if you wanted to jump in and provided any updates about your first meeting, but as I understand it, there were welcome introductions. There were some norms until you all co-construct. There was an overview of McKinley, some data was presented, and then you were considering your goals as a group.
And that's exactly what happened, Lauren. It was the first meeting to kind of meet all the members and discuss kind of priorities. And we still unfortunately didn't receive the actual intervention teams report, because one of the mandates was to work on implementing the implementation teams. So we talked about things like that and what data can be shared publicly, because we want this to be a transparent process also. So we also talked about what information would be able to be posted with agendas and certain notes so that anyone, including the McKinley community and anyone who's really vested and interested in it, can keep track of the progress and see the direction we're heading in. So yeah, we definitely take feedback, and anyone who wants to send us emails or contact information, but it was just the first meeting that we were planning to have at least 11. And then we're going to go from there of just really working to make the McKinley schools what it was supposed to be, a very strong therapeutic program that supports student and family needs while also maintaining academic rigor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for jumping in there. Okay, next slide. Ethan, have you joined us? I'm not sure we got to
He
introduce
is here,
you.
Ethan is here, yes.
Oh, great.
Yes, I am here. Here we go.
Hi, Ethan.
Hey,
Everybody, this
Lauren.
is Ethan. We introduced everyone at the beginning. Ethan, you weren't here. So Ethan Doublemont Burns, I'll let you
Sure.
say a few words too.
Sure, Ethan Doublemont Burns. Nice to see you all. Assistant Superintendent of Inclusive Education, and look forward to giving a brief update. Is the slide up? Here we go.
Your slide is up.
Go.
Yep.
Okay, terrific. There we go. That's great. Sorry, let me pull it up. I've got to get it in the right place. Here we go. So just an update on inclusion. The biggest thing that happened over the summer was that we signed a new contract with the BTU, and our fundamental purpose in signing that contract or coming to agreement was really collaborating and partnering with our union partners around restructuring how we're able to do inclusion. And we really felt like we were able to get to a new place that is really exciting, that is also going to take a lot of work from everybody to be able to get it right, and engagement is going to be huge in this process, and understanding family voice and all that. And just to quote one of the pieces from the contract, that all classrooms in the Boston Public Schools must be inclusive. Previously, we have talked about inclusion kids or inclusion classrooms, inclusion programs, and we really need to understand that inclusion is not a place. It's really about how we want to see our schools. And we hope that this new contract will allow us to realize that vision. Another key piece of the contract is our inclusion planning teams. Every school will have an inclusion planning team, and they will be working towards creating, making sure that there's a continuum of supports in every school so that students can be educated in the least restrictive environment. That is our goal in the inclusion planning teams, which are going to be 50% BTU members, 50% non-BTU members, will be working towards that goal. We really do feel like it was a great agreement, and that we were able to get there and feel like the collaboration is in place to be able to be there. Through ESSER funding, we have, we're going to be working with a cohort of schools this year, 21, maybe with one more to be added. So perhaps 22 schools with customized support from central coaches. So we have 3 inclusion coaches and an executive director who will be working with these schools to build inclusion more aggressively in these schools. And we have lots of schools that have been working really hard over many years to get there. And I think that with the new contract in place and with the inclusion planning teams in place, we'll be able to collaborate to get to a better place for our students. And that's for all the cohort schools are going to be elementary schools, K-6 and K-8 schools. At the secondary schools, because of the pressure we have on our seats, and what I mean by that is we have a lot of students who need inclusive education coming up, that every high school is going to have an inclusion planning team this year. And that our expectation is that they're going to get started in this work, because we've got a lot of work to do at the high school level. So every school will have an inclusion planning team. Also want to let you know that all this work does not only happen in schools. We know that there's a lot of work we need to do in central office as well, in terms of being able to support this. So in terms of assignment, particularly in terms of special education assignment, how we fund schools, what resources are available, how we budget for schools is really important and is critical to this. And if we don't do that work well, it's going to be hard for schools to do that well. So we convened something called the cross-functional inclusion team that brings together a lot of departments together to be able to manage that process. And then lastly, and shouldn't be last, and I said it at the beginning, just that the engagement is going to be really, really important to get this right. Not only do we want to, as I say, engage here with the big four, you know, SpEdPAC, Citywide Parents Council, DLAC, and Community Engagement Advisory Council, but we also want to have some listening sessions with parents throughout the community and hear their stories about how their journey has been in special education and when they feel like it has worked really well and when it hasn't, when their students been able to be educated in the least restrictive environment and when they haven't, and what that looks like. And so we look forward to getting into that. We also want to engage with community organizations that advocate for students with disabilities and also English language learners, DLAC, I was thinking Mass Advocates for Children, Bryce's Journey, Federation for Children with Special Needs, and hearing those stories as well and understanding their perspective on this work as well. And then lastly, through engagement is the engagement at the school level, and that our hope is that this conversation about inclusion will be happening not only at the district level, but also at the school. And whether it's through on the school site council, through the parent council, through the school-based equity roundtable, that the inclusion planning team presents their plans so that we're able to have a school-based voice and parent and family voice engaged at the school level. So we feel like we're well positioned to be able to build this. It's going to be a lot of work for all of us to get this right. And we all need to go into this understanding that we're creating something new and that we're learning, and we need to go in with that orientation. And we look forward to collaborating and engaging with you.
Thank you, Ethan. And can you address also the exam schools, if this includes the exam schools with inclusion, and also the question regarding will there no longer be sub-separate classrooms in this district?
Sure. Let me take the second one first. There absolutely will be substantially separate classrooms in this district. Really important, and Roxy, you know, you and I have talked about this. What there needs to be is a full continuum of services. The least restrictive environment for some students is a substantially separate classroom, and that's where they are going to be able to make the most progress. The issue in Boston currently is that we have too many students who are educated in a substantially separate environment. We have twice the national average, and we need to do better than that. There are too many students in substantially separate settings currently who could be successful in a more inclusive environment. And part of that means we're going to need to build partial inclusion environments. So you may not spend all day in a smaller setting, but you may need part of the day in the smaller setting. And we don't have systems and structures, budgeting and staffing systems and structures to support that. And that's something that we need to work on. So, but if there is a student, and there are certainly going to be some who need more restrictive environments, that those are needed, we will make sure that those are available. With regard to exam schools, obviously a tricky question in Boston. What I would say is that under Dr. Consilius's leadership, she did some important work to open up the exam schools to students with disabilities, and they have increased the numbers of students with disabilities that are served in exam schools. And they are currently wrestling with how best to do that. And we've had to make staffing and budgeting adjustments to make sure that the students who are accepted to the exam schools are served and are able to have their IEPs fulfilled at the exam schools. That being said, I think there's still a lot of open questions about that I would leave to, that I think will unfold over time. So I'll leave it at that for now. And I can't see the chat, so I don't know if there
I'm
other
just
questions.
about to pull it.
Sharing
I
now.
think the exam school one is going to be a longer conversation, because if we've talked, Ethan, genuine inclusion includes advanced students, not just examine them out into different exam schools. But yes, that is a longer question. The next question talks about the ESSER funds, and if it was used to create any of these positions, including these inclusion programming things, or what was used for ESSER funds to create any of the central office positions or anything like that.
Yes, currently 4 of the central positions working on inclusion are ESSER based. we will be doing a maintenance, what's called a maintenance proposal, just because we don't, and that means they're funded for 2 years. We will be doing a maintenance proposal to make sure, because we don't think that we'll be all done getting this right in 2 years. So there will be more work to do after 2 years. So we'll be trying to figure out how to fund those positions beyond that.
Thank you. So the only funds that we use were 4 positions in central office.
Yeah.
With the extra funds for the inclusion office. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yep.
And
then I saw something about partial inclusion that I want to speak to as well, which is just, Courtney, important. We have built up over time a system that I think the state has described sort of as an either or system. You're either fully included or you're substantially separate. And what we need to start doing is starting to understand that students can be included for part of the day, but not the whole day. And that it really is open to, we need to build this muscle of figuring out how to make sure kids can be in the general education classroom when they're supposed to be. And if they need other time where they're a smaller class setting makes more sense, that we can do that as well. And that's something that we need to work on.
And if I could just build on that for a second, Ethan, I think the inclusion like philosophy is that kids, even who spend some of their time outside a general ed environment, they're included in the whole school community. So I think if we think about the school community as an inclusive community, when sometimes kids need specific small group instruction for particular things outside the general ed environment. So I think it's a continuum of services, working with families as true partners to be thinking really creatively about how do we take a school community and make sure that it's inclusive for all kids who need to be in that school community, and provide a wide range of services where we're bringing services to the child or to the student rather than making the student go to the services.
Absolutely. And you can see in the chat, some people have shared just some stories about their child being told they can't be in inclusion because the school doesn't have services. But aside from the stories, I also want to make sure we get some of the questions. One question about staffing for inclusion classrooms. There's an assumption that there will be a need for more teachers and paras. What are the initial plans around the staffing or need to hire for the inclusion?
So a couple of things I would say about that. Number one, the staffing is going to depend on the specifics of the IEP, right? And so we have operated under this idea that inclusion is 15 and 5 and a teacher and a para. And we need to understand that sometimes if you have a student who has rules-based reading, that you need to be able to meet that IEP, and that means the staffing in that classroom may be a little bit different. So I think the staffing is really going to depend on the concentration of need, both in the building and within the individual classroom, and what those IEPs look like. You know, what's the character of them? What do they have? Are they heavy on rules-based reading? Are they heavy on math? And you're going to have to think about how to staff that specifically given those needs. The other thing I would say is that we recognized in negotiations this year and agreed that this is very likely going to take more people to be able to do this right, and to do this well, both by our staff and by our children. And that is why the mayor has stepped up and made a commitment of funds, an investment to get this right. I know they're not nailing down the details of that, but we hope that there will be that explicit commitment, and a specific commitment will be coming. But there is a mutual recognition that it will take more people, and we need to figure out how to get those more people. And the mayor has already made that commitment, but we do need to work out the details.
And could you also talk about, well, first, is there a link? I don't know if you can share of the 21 schools. Someone's asking where they can get the information on the 21 schools that are part of inclusion. If you could put that in the chat, that'd be helpful.
I can't put it in the chat, but Roxy, I can certainly send it to you tomorrow.
Okay, sure. Then we could post it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then the other question, I think, is more of being mindful of, as time goes on, how things are defined. I think the comment about partial inclusion seeming a little pregnant is like, we really have to be clear about what these things mean as they are developed.
Yeah. Yeah, if I can, what I would say
And then the
is
other
it's
part
re-
of that, along
Yeah.
with that, is also, and I think this is connected to, if you could discuss both,
Sure.
is how you're going to prepare students in general ed classrooms for special needs children. So kind of preparing the community, right?
So let me,
And I would
again,
say,
let me take,
I would also say for advanced students, because inclusion really is a mixture of different abilities is what inclusion would be. So preparing them
Yeah.
for those changes.
well, let me take the second question first, around preparing general ed students and families for what this looks like. Because of how we have done inclusion previously, there's this idea that special education students with IEPs belong in a certain place, and that there's a place for them. In my experience at the Manning, which I understand is a particular example, but some of the greatest learning we had, was done by our general education students and families who learned that everyone has something to contribute and everybody has something to work on. And if you start at that place, that my kid may be really good at math, but they may have something to learn on reading. A kid may have a tantrum at recess or during social studies and then come back and solve a really hard math problem, right? And that we all have something to work on and we all have something to contribute. And that's by creating inclusion as a place and creating so many substantially separate seats, we've created a place for special education students that I think we as a community need to support them to break out of, and to be able to contribute what they have to contribute. And it's a tremendous learning for all of us. And it's not all on special education students and their families. It is embracing inclusion from the perspective of special education and language and identity and all these intersectional ideas so that our communities can be stronger. So sorry if I sound a little high-minded, but I get worked up when I start talking about these issues. Regarding the first question around definitions of partial inclusion, really important question. And what's important to know about that is that it is defined in state regulations, and that we need to really examine those state regulations and make sure that we're following them in terms of the definitions of what is substantially separate, what is partial inclusion, what is full inclusion. And we will be doing that over time. And it's a piece that all of us need to learn about. Because if you grew up as an educator, or even if you grew up as a family with kids in BPS, as I did, and as I did as an educator, then you have certain perspectives because of the ways that we have done this. But we're about to make a big change, and we all need to learn how this change is going to work.
I'm sorry, there was a question I know I skipped over because I was scrolling and now my eyes are trying to find it again. The timeline, that was where the question was. Someone asked the question about what is the real timeline for this? And when you answer that, if you could take into account and be mindful that in the chat, people are also sharing how even in their current setting, without these schools being inclusion all, that we have schools that aren't able to provide ABAs or are telling people they don't have this service, their child can't be here and there. The reality of what our families are actually experiencing, and then the timeline of when this would all really occur. Could you talk about that, please?
Sure. To be perfectly frank, we're working on the implementation plan of this. It is an enormously complicated piece because it calls into question and implicates how we fund schools. And that's number one, how we fund schools, how we structure staffing and the number of students in each classroom, and also how we assign kids to schools. The idea would be that more students are able to go to more schools. And that means that we need to prepare those schools to be able to work with a wider range of students. And so that's a lot of professional development as well. We recognize that we can't wait forever and sort of wait for schools to get on board. At some point, you need to say, no, this is our job. They are our children. We need to educate them. And also, we need to prepare schools. So we're trying to balance the pressure of needing to make sure our kids, every kid gets what they need that is in BPS right now, and also making sure our educators are prepared to do this work. So it's not a specific answer. We don't have a nailed down implementation plan yet. I think last thing I would say on that is at school committee on November 16th, as Lauren said, the Council of Great City School is presenting their report. I think after that, as part of the systemic improvement plan, we will be submitting an implementation plan to the state that will have some dates. So I would think by the middle of December or early January, we will have at least a high-level implementation plan with dates.
Thank you. And if families now want to just follow the trajectory of where inclusion is going, meaning, yes, beyond just the schools, but also what the timeline is that's being developed, is there a link that you can share with them in the chat to how to follow just this Office of Inclusion to continue to just keep up to date on the engagement?
Sure.
And
no, I
everything
really,
like that? And then I would also say if you could address, because in the chat too, yes, we're going to have the continuous services, you mentioned that. But there's also the question of also beyond professional development where with our educators, there's also the structure of the classroom, the build of the classroom, right? Because there are sensory needs, there may be auditory, visual, there's a lot of different needs, and a way of classroom is also designed, things that are in it, impact if a classroom could actually be an inclusion classroom depending on the students that would be assigned to that class.
Sure.
So could you speak about if that's being looked at also, because I know you mentioned educator, professional development, but what about these other aspects that are needed for inclusion?
Sure. I'm just trying to remember your first question, Roxy. Sorry, let me take the second question first around making sure our classrooms are prepared. It's a really good question. And I'm not sure if what you're exactly getting at, but we had a meeting, as I said, a cross-functional inclusion team meeting today. And one of the things we talked about was the importance of schools having enough spaces to be able to do the pullout necessary to be able to create those partial inclusion environments, and which schools have those spaces and which schools don't, right? And so facilities, both sort of extra classrooms, smaller spaces, and also what's in the classroom. Certainly, all the sensory needs that I think is mentioned in the chat is really important to get at. So those things really matter along with the facilities piece. Roxy, the first question was around.
The first one was about being able to follow your department, your inclusion.
Oh, yes. So we're also ESSER funded a project manager that we have not hired for yet. And I'm hoping that that person will be able to sort of build a website so that as part of a page on BPS. And even if we don't do that, we'll be working with the communication department to work on that. So we don't have it yet, but we'll try and get that up and running before the new year or sometime in the new year.
Thank you. And I know the team does have to leave. So we appreciate you staying on longer and just really trying to answer these questions. And we look forward to the feedback also of being able to do the engagement around inclusion and these other aspects. So we really want to thank you guys for being here and giving our families a chance to ask some questions.
Great. Thank you so much.
So I will say that because we had limited time with the systemic improvement plan team, I don't want you to think that this is the last chance to speak to them, ask questions of the team, or even share your concerns of things you may have heard tonight, where you're like, I want to know more, or I just may be a little concerned. We have another 30 minutes, even though as the team may have to leave, we can discuss and we can bring questions to them and also follow up as needed with any member of the team that was here, or if there's someone that wasn't here tonight, that you were like, this question would fall under them, we can definitely get that to them also. So I just want everyone to know that this is not the end of the conversation. And Lauren, I didn't know if you had any ending thoughts or anything, because I know you said the team had other engagements tonight, so I just want to be mindful of any last thought.
Thank you so much, Roxy, for having us, for asking us to come. We're happy to come back as we continue to iterate and improve and make more deliverables actualized regarding the systemic improvement plan. I'm grateful for your partnership. I've listed my email in the chat a few times. Feel free to reach out to me at any time anyone has any issues. And so I really look forward to our ongoing partnership and to be in touch with you all very soon. Thanks again.
When Lauren, before you go, I actually think that last question is a good one to end on. They're asking about, is there a set of information that you want community organizations to share with families? You know, like Federation MAC and all the organizations we all work with, and even SpEdPAC, CPC, everyone, when families come to us, is there, like, do you have a set of information where you're like, here's the correct information that I would like you to share with families whenever they reach out, or if you have anything like that that's already prepared?
Yeah, really good question. Really, really good question. We are working really hard on a couple of things in collaboration with the SpEdPAC and with Angie and the helpline desk. One is, I talked about a little bit earlier, the, I beg your pardon. One is the procedure manual for families that's family facing and translatable. The Federation or some organization like the Federation will be producing these for us. We're going to likely engage in a lot of feedback sessions and community involvement around what portions of the manual need to be kind of broken down into brochure kind of formats, so it's much more consumable, not just for families, but for professionals too, for everybody, because the manual is very dense. So that's one thing. The other thing that we're working on is an FAQ where families call, they call Angie's department a lot, and we have, they call special ed, and they have there are frequently asked questions about special education that we want to make sure that we provide the information. So we will definitely share that. It's new. Joshi actually took the lead on that. She's been working really hard on making sure we have the right questions and all of those. So we will definitely be rolling that out in collaboration with Roxy and the other SpEdPAC members to make sure that they think that we have the right questions. And I'm sure there'll be additional questions that they have that we should be adding to that. So that's in development too. And then that will also be translated and posted, and we'd happy to send it out to the Federation and MAC and everyone else. So the brochures, the FAQ, the website is something that I'm hoping to get updated. It's an important tool for communication. And so I feel like that there's things we could do there. So as soon as that's done, I would love to have input on that as well. So those are the big things that we're working on from the BPS side to provide information that's accessible, translated, and accurate, and make sure it's updated.
Lauren, in the newsletter that went out today.
Oh my gosh, Joshi, yes, the newsletter. I knew there was something else and I couldn't think of it. Yes, the newsletter just went out today. We're likely gonna, our goal with Joshi's leadership is to produce one once a month. Today was the first one. The goal was that it went out a little bit earlier, but we had some hiccups along the way, mostly with technology. But moving forward, we kind of have a good handle on what's going to happen now. So we're hoping for once a month. If you have ideas, Roxy had some great ideas. Roxy and Charlie, we meet with them. They had some great ideas, but if you have other ideas, please feel free to reach out to me and we'll make sure that they get in. If you have ideas about what kind of content you'd like to see, please reach out. We would love to highlight what you think we should highlight. We try to highlight kids and schools and things that are happening. So anything else that I missed, Joshi or Heidi or Mary or Angie or?
No, I'm just trying to answer questions that were coming to me in the chat. So I'm absolutely happy to stay if there's a question and answer time that you had specifically about Helpline and how we're supporting the OSE team. But otherwise, I'm always at your disposal to talk specifically about how our service can be made better for SpEdPAC or any other advocacy group who would like to meet with us.
Thank you. And we will share the questions that there's some additional questions coming in via the chat, and we will share those so that you can answer them and we can post them. And then hopefully they also get added to the FAQ so families can see it. I think some may be things you have to look into, some data regarding like representation for special needs individuals, even that work within the Office of OSE, and things like that. That'd be very that we'd like to hear more about. But yeah, we'll compile additional questions from tonight and get them back to the whole team so that they can share it with us. And if anyone from the team hasn't had a chance, it would be great if you could put your information in the chat. So if families want to follow up with you afterwards or have a private question about their particular student or anything going on in BPS, they can reach out directly to you also.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful for the time and the collaboration.
Absolutely, thank you. So while they're putting their information in the chat and departing, we have about 20 more minutes. And, like I said, we wanted to make sure we have time for one, some people prefer to ask questions anonymously. So if you want to put it in the chat or you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you. I see the discussion back and forth in the chat regarding if inclusion's right for everyone versus separate. And you know what? Remember, all our families are different, and we're going to make the best decision we can for our children. And when they become of age or are able to make decisions, they may make what's best for them. There is no right or wrong of whether that family is choosing that this separate setting is where my child's going to continue, even though the district's added more inclusion. If that is what that family needs and that child needs to be successful, there is nothing wrong with that. Just like there's nothing wrong with the expectation that in an inclusive society, BPS still has to prepare these opportunities to make sure all of our students can have the opportunity that's available. So Courtney, I do see your hand, so I'm going to ask you to unmute so you can speak live.
Thanks, Roxy. I just wanted to add, so I'm Courtney Philly-Karp. I'm a parent of a student with an IEP at the Henderson Inclusion School. I also serve as the Henderson representative on the citywide parent council. And so I just did want to acknowledge, some of the work we're doing at CPC is to be more collaborative with SpEdPAC and be really good partners, particularly through this. The SIP is just the worst acronym ever, but this innovation plan, this improvement plan, so that we as families can engage. And I think this inclusion conversation is a really good example of where I think this is important. At the Henderson, one of the things that I've always loved about our head of school, when she talks about the success of the Henderson, she always leads with how inclusion impacts the gen ed students first, and then talks about how it works for special education students. And I think some of the concerns I was trying to convey in the chat with some of the language around the district is this, like I always say, inclusion is an education delivery tool, not a special education delivery tool. And when you start incorporating inclusion as a least restrictive environment, you're putting it in a SpEd box as opposed to an education box in many instances. And I agree with everything Roxy was saying, about it's not that inclusion is the answer for everyone. There are instances, and my daughter is in a full inclusion school and still gets pulled out to do work on stairs or other things that are just not appropriate in the classroom. And that's like, I don't want to get distracted by that. I think both our job as family groups, and I wanted to raise this, is that my concern is in other communities where you've seen backlash against increased inclusion because people view it as a bringing the overall gen ed rooms down as opposed to raising the bar for everyone, and all of that sort of very negative reflexive language that comes from ignorance. And so I don't want to underestimate, I think, the work we need to do with the district and better helping them talk about this and preparing materials for the BPS community at large. But when I see lots of family spaces talking about the loss of I forget what they were called, the advanced, they were like the gifted program students.
Advanced classrooms, yeah, the AWCs.
Yeah, and stuff like that. That I don't want all of this to get lumped up together. And so I think this continuing to push inclusion as a better education delivery for all students, and that model is something that I certainly think both the CPC and SpEdPAC is something I'd like to talk more about, and how we can get, I think, a lot, particularly the central staff, to talk a little bit more in line with that, as well as some other things. But that's just my 2 cents. But thank you, Roxy, for letting me share.
No, thank you, appreciate it. And you're right, because we have seen school communities where when include, and granted, this was a few years ago, this is pre-COVID, but mindsets didn't just suddenly change because we went through COVID. There have been some schools where when certain programs or children were coming to their school, because people didn't understand what it really was and who our children are, there was this old mindset of, oh, are they going to bring the school down, the grades down, the MCAS scores, oh, what the money's going to them. So I think it's going to be very important when these inclusion outreach community events are occurring to really make sure people have the facts, because the research is there. Inclusion or when special needs students and academically advanced students, generalized students are in a class together, they all benefit. It is not just for the benefit of our special needs students. There is no doubt about that. So I welcome anyone, whether it's about any topic, any questions you want to, oh, Jesse, yes. Axica, mute.
Hi, everyone. I am just going back a little bit to a topic we covered ad nauseum last month with transportation. My husband and I were on WBZ at the end of September. And yesterday we were called by Julie McDonald, who was going to do a follow-up story about the PRS complaint that was just filed in terms of transportation. We did not qualify with Mass Advocate, so we were not part of that complaint. But if there is a family here who is part of that complaint and would like to talk to the press about whatever the issue that they're having is, I'm going to put my phone number in the chat. My name is Jessie Elliott, and please feel free to text me and I will connect you with Julie. It's an ongoing story that WBZ has definitely been keeping up on, and they're interested, I think, in helping to keep that transportation piece in the news and make sure that there's pressure about that.
Thank you, Jesse. Because, and it is important. I think we've received some help from advocacy groups that a PRS and other people just really continue to ask questions, right? Because at the end of the day, there are many families who don't realize that, and you don't know till you, especially if no one tells you, right? They don't know, oh, your child got to school late because of the late bus, so they missed speech or they didn't get the service. Oh, well, that should be comp time. Is anyone talking to me about my comp time? It's the excused absent, but we should be tracking how frequently is my child missing, whether a service, a class, or something because of that bus. So it's really important to keep that pressure on, because transportation has been an ongoing challenge pre-COVID. It isn't that COVID happened and we had staffing shortages and all of a sudden, transportation is suddenly a problem. I personally strongly encourage anyone who continues to have challenges, if they're not being fixed, speak out, keep the pressure on, because when you speak about it, there may be another family who can't speak about it for various reasons, but they're going through the same thing. So I think it's really important for those of us who can and speak about it or know who to connect with and talk to be that voice to help others too. That is all part of why we as a whole collective try to make sure special ed in Boston improves. And that includes from the time the child's picked up at the door to the time they are returned back at home, whether it's a door-to-door or a corner stop child. So we just want to be mindful of that. So Jesse, thank you for sharing that information too. And Sarah, I do see your hand. So I've asked you to unmute also.
Thank you, Roxy. Sarah Harold. I'm a parent of two, both on IEPs, one existing at the Mozart, one former Mozart. Roxy, you know the story. I reached out to you, but high level, I had my son in the inclusion program over at the Mozart last year at 3, was not being provided services. I had to pull him for FAPE. And I am going through the process of putting him back and re-enrolling him into BPS for kindergarten. But my major concern here is, especially around the timeline, and my question going back to the systemic program, transformation program, and inclusion, and just how they're going to look at services. That's great that they're starting to do this, but what about now? What are they going to do about the cultural change of attitudes around people, about our children who need services? I mean, literally fighting tooth and nail to get more than 2 by 30 speech for my nonverbal child. I'm being told that a pediatric neuropsych eval doesn't actually mean anything in their world in regards to how much ABA my son needs. And it's very, I just feel like old school, uneducated, bad misinformation, if you will, just around what our children needs, that not every child fits a certain profile. And I know they talked about, staffing based off of more of the needs and the profile of the children within the classrooms. But I feel like those conversations need to start now. So there's a cultural shift as far how the staff actually view our children and provide the services and make those recommendations for IEPs. I'm fortunate enough to have an advocate, but not everyone can do that. And it's mind-blowing what the disparities are as far as what everyone can get. So I just feel like there needs to be more visibility and more education just within the schools district.
No, thank you, Sarah. Completely agree. I think, and that goes back to Ethan's department and also the special ed, but general ed, everyone needs to understand. And when I say needs to understand, really, it's like, if you've never, and there are some families and there's some individuals that work within BPS and families too, who literally have never experienced a special ed student. I took a college class with a BCBA one time, and she said she'd never met a special ed student, so she started working within her field. It just, none of her family, anything. So sometimes when people have never been exposed to something, they have no knowledge at all, or they've only heard things. And there are people that have that old mindset. I mean, I hate to say it, but 67 wasn't that long ago when there was a time when our children would have been put basically in a building, in a room, and not been in classes at all. So we have to make sure that if people have the philosophy that our children don't belong in the school setting or within inclusion or BPS, that if they work for the school district, then that's not the right mindset. They can't continue. If they're the families, they also need to know the benefits and understand that all of our children have the rights to be there, and also the benefits that their children will get from it. So I think it's a combination, and I would encourage you also to reach out to Ethan's department and email him too, as he started to do these engagement activities district-wide. I think it's important that he and anyone working with him is taking this into consideration of how things are framed, how information is given. It shouldn't be with, you just have to be in the class with these kids. It should really be talking about the benefits and why, and so that people can really understand, because sometimes it's because they really just don't know. And I'm trying to keep an eye on the chat too. And the same thing with, I've heard this too, because I saw a couple of comments in the chat regarding, some gifted students that also may have, it could be autism, it could be a different disability. You can be gifted with various disabilities, not just autism. And that's what I mean about a genuine inclusive district. That child that's working academically advanced should be able to get that work so they can continue to build up in an inclusion classroom if that's the setting that child may happen to be in the same way that a child that needs more scaffolded support to access the curriculum is getting support. That is literally what inclusion would be if it was being done correctly.
Roxy, this is Heidi. I just wanted to say that we have many youth in the district that are performing at or above average academically and get supports for social emotional reasons. And if a parent, I saw a few parents that said, I have a concern wondering about the IEP process for those youth. If you have a concern, please reach out to the coordinator of special ed at your school and ask for your student to be evaluated. And we'll do a comprehensive evaluation in the areas of suspected disability and make a team decision based on special ed services. So academic performance is one component, but we do look at the whole child and how they perform.
Thank you for adding that, Heidi, because that's important to realize that it isn't always just that, oh, well, this child is underperforming in this particular class. You know, there's the social aspects of the many things that make a whole child that can be looked at. So I also want to make sure we do. Heidi's one of the high school ADs, and I think Mary, I saw was still on. If you also have specific concerns, we try to make sure we always offer this opportunity at our meetings too. If it's like you want to go into detail and you're like, my child has this specific issue and I'm having trouble at the school with this, and this, the detail. Remember, you can always ask to go into a breakout room with the assistant director of special education to figure out what might be the next best steps or how you might be able to access something. So I also want you to know, yes, we always talk about our whole advocacy of supporting, you know, various students. But if you have a specific concern to where you have to describe details about your child, we will always offer you the breakout room. You can put that in the chat or raise your hand and the AD can go in a breakout room with you too. Hire autistic consultants to guide trainings, IEP accommodations. I would be happy to add that to the questions, unless any of the ADs also want to address that about the hiring of autistic consultants. But if not, I will definitely submit that with our questions to the team that came today so that we can get back that FAQ, because I do think that's one good thing that's coming, right? Our groups met with jointly with the superintendent and her team for DLAC, SpEdPAC, and CPC. And that's why it's really great to hear Courtney talk about one of CPC's goals, working more collaboratively with SpEdPAC, because one of our members, Kim, actually one of our board members, that's one of her goals too. So that's what she'll be focusing on too. Because there's a lot of things that overlap that we can really support each other with, including even, so once I have y'all here on the call, I'm going to even mention, even with the SpEdPAC reps, you know, we have 121 schools, but the Office of Engagement has been able to send 4 schools that have SpEdPAC reps. But yet when I ask other people, they say, oh no, our school has a SpEdPAC rep. So I just want to encourage you, when you go back to your schools, like I know, for example, I'll use the Henderson as an example only because one of our board members mentioned that they did elections last year, at the end of this year for this school year. They said they have a SpEdPAC rep. The Office of Engagement says they don't. So I mean, just please encourage your family liaison or whoever is doing the elections submitting to the Office of Engagement to please send those reps names, because that helps us send information out so that they can then bring it back to your schools. So I honestly want to just give a little plug there for the SpEdPAC reps, the CPC reps, and the DLAC reps too, because to be honest with you, I saw the list and there were like 2 DLAC reps for the whole district and like, I think 7 or 10 for CPC. And that's not, I know families do want to engage. One person is going to want to engage with the groups. I think it's a matter of spreading the word and letting families know too. Oh, Tech Boston Academy wasn't even on our list, Daniel, so thank you for letting me know that for 2022-2023 school year. So this is what I mean. It's helpful to get together and, you know, to encourage your family liaisons. Can you just make sure that you sent that to engagement office? Because we heard a lot of the 3 parent groups haven't gotten their reps, and that's how they communicate with us. Because we can't get your email information unless it's given to us, specifically saying you're a rep so that we can share information. So I just wanted to be mindful of that. And then that's also the same way when we send back, like if I get the answers to these questions you're putting in the chat, this is the emails that they give us that say they're the school reps. Those are the individuals that we then send back out to the email that will say, hey, here's the updated list. We'll post it on our website, yes. But we'll also send that email out to any of the individuals that we have emails for that have been identified as reps for this year that can share back with their parent councils at the school so that more people can get the information. So just to be mindful of that too. Let's go back up the The map growth assessment is going to be, oh, that's the separate message, but yes, so we're going to be doing a dyslexia reading 1, 2. There's lots of things that are coming up between equitable grading is still circulating, inclusion meetings. What's the other meeting that was coming up? Equitable literacy is still circling to give feedback, because we really want to consider how all these different things touch our special education students and things that aren't being considered from the aspect of different needs. So that's why we need our voices to be there at these various meetings too. So with that said, it is like 1 minute to 8:30. If you haven't had a chance, please throw any questions you have that you want us to bring back to the district to get answers for, or you can always email us at Boston SpEdPAC, and I'll throw that in the chat. Boston SpEdPAC 411@gmail.com if it's something specific for us. But other than that, we're going to compile the questions from the chat to make sure that we can get these answers. So if there's anything that's been sticking out of your mind, whether at your school or you've heard something and you're just like, that didn't feel right when it comes to my special ed child, or what's happening at the equity roundtables, they're not considering opportunity and achievement gaps when it comes to special needs students, whatever it may be, feel free to throw it in the chat and we'll go from there. Other than that, I want to thank definitely our interpreters for being here tonight. We really appreciate the service you provide to our families, and obviously our BPS staff that were able to stay on to the end of the meeting and really help out with answering questions in the chat and providing their contact information, because it's really helpful to hear it from someone and know what the right answer is. So, and just all of our families, take away time from dinner, the kids, and everything else under the sun. So thank you all for coming out tonight. We are going to close the meeting shortly, but throw it all in the chat, anything that's left on the table, or send us an email if you have any concerns or there's something you want us to really talk about or bring forth that is weighing on your mind, your heart, whether for multiple children or for something you're experiencing. We want to be here for each other. So thank you all. And I want to say have a lovely night.